The family group chat notification lit up my phone during the quarterly trust review meeting at Vanguard Fiduciary Trust, where I'd been managing institutional wealth for the past 7 years. Dad's message was accompanied by a photo of him and my brother Kyle standing next to a new Porsche Cayenne. Kyle's killing it in real estate. Just closed another $1 million deal. Finally have a son who understands money. Money big. I stared at the screen from my conference room on the 52nd floor, surrounded by documents showing that Kyle's $1 million deals were entirely funded by the $65,000 monthly distributions I'd been arranging from their family trust for 6 years. The trust I'd structured. The trust one managed. The trust that had grown from $4.2 million to $7.8 million under my oversight while they credited everyone except me for their financial success. My name on every quarterly statement. Trust Administrator, M. Patterson CFA Fiduciary Services. Their understanding of who M. Patterson was. 0. To my family I was just Maya, the 29-year-old daughter who'd wasted her finance degree on some boring trust company job, instead of joining Dad's construction business or Kyle's real estate ventures. They'd spent years telling relatives I couldn't handle money, and needed to learn from the successful ones in the family. The successful ones. Kyle, whose real estate license had been suspended twice for ethics violations. Dad, whose construction company would have bankrupted 3 years ago without the steady capital injections I'd been quietly arranging through trust distributions disguised as investment returns. Mom's follow-up text twisted the knife deeper. So proud of my successful men. Maya could learn a lot from Kyle about building wealth instead of just pushing papers around. Pushing papers around. Those papers included portfolio management agreements for $2.4 billion in family trust assets, including the trust that funded their entire lifestyle. But I'd never corrected their assumptions, never revealed my role as the mysterious financial advisor they occasionally mentioned when explaining their good fortune to friends. The quarterly family dinner had become a ritual of financial humiliation. Kyle would arrive in whatever luxury car the trust distributions had purchased that month, regaling everyone with stories of his real estate expertise while I carved the turkey and listened to them credit his business acumen for the family's prosperity. Maya just doesn't have the entrepreneurial spirit, Dad would explain to relatives, usually after his third glass of wine paid for by trust income. She's more of a support person. Kyle got the business genes. Last month's dinner had been particularly galling. Kyle had spent an hour explaining cryptocurrency investments to the table, using terms he'd clearly Googled that morning. Maya could never understand this level of financial complexity, he'd announced, patting my shoulder like I was a golden retriever. Better stick to your data entry job, sis. Data entry. I managed diversified portfolios worth more than Kyle's entire real estate market, consulted for pension funds, and held the CFA designation that required 3 years of intensive study and professional experience. But correcting Kyle would have meant revealing information protected by fiduciary confidentiality. Dad had nodded approvingly at Kyle's expertise. This is why successful people make the money decisions, Maya. You focus on your little job and let the adults handle real wealth building. The breaking point came last week when Kyle announced his plan to take the family finances to the next level by liquidating their trust assets to invest in his new development project, a strip mall in a declining neighborhood that any competent analysis would have identified as a guaranteed loss. We need to move fast, Kyle had explained during his impromptu family presentation, complete with PowerPoint slides he'd made in Microsoft Paint. The trust money is just sitting there earning boring returns. Real entrepreneurs create wealth through bold action. When I gently suggested they consult with a professional before making major financial changes, Dad's response was swift and dismissive. Maya, this is exactly why you can't handle money. You're too conservative and risk-averse. Kyle understands that building wealth requires vision. Vision. Kyle's vision would have cost them $2.3 million in immediate tax penalties and destroyed the financial foundation that had been supporting their lifestyle for 6 years. But they preferred his confident ignorance to my professional expertise because his mistakes came wrapped in masculine bravado while my competence was invisible. I'd spent 6 years listening to them take credit for my work while publicly questioning my ability to understand basic finance. Now they wanted to destroy what I'd built while patronizing me about my lack of business sense. That night, I opened my secure laptop and began reviewing the Patterson family trust termination procedures. Some professional relationships required immediate reevaluation. Tuesday morning brought Kyle's latest social media post, a photo of him signing papers at a title company, captioned, "Another day, another deal. Building generational wealth one property at a time. #entrepreneur, #success, #real estate." The comments were full of congratulations from family friends who had no idea that Kyle's successful deals were entirely financed by trust distributions I'd been structuring as business loans. I was reviewing his latest request for additional capital when my assistant buzzed my office intercom. "Maya, your brother is here requesting an emergency meeting about family financial planning." Kyle strode into my corner office at Vanguard Fiduciary Trust like he owned the building, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary and carrying a briefcase that probably contained more of his hand-drawn investment charts. "Maya, great news. I found an incredible investment opportunity for our family trust." He settled into the chair across from my desk without invitation, apparently oblivious to the irony of asking his financially incompetent sister to approve a major investment decision. "What kind of opportunity?" I asked, genuinely curious about what financial disaster he was planning this week. Kyle opened his briefcase and spread out papers that looked like they'd been assembled by a middle schooler. "A mixed-use development in Newark. Residential, commercial, retail, the whole package. I can get us in on the ground floor for just $4.5 million. I glanced at his business plan, noting the complete absence of market analysis, environmental impact assessments, zoning compliance reviews, or basic financial projections. The developer was someone named Big Tony Marconi, whose business address was a P.O. box in Trenton. "Kyle, have you done any due diligence on this developer or the property?" His laugh was condescending. "Maya, that's not how real deals work. When you find a golden opportunity, you move fast before someone else grabs it. This is exactly why you don't understand wealth building. You overthink everything." He pulled out his phone and showed me photos of an empty lot surrounded by abandoned warehouses. "Prime real estate in an emerging market. Big Tony says we'll triple our investment within 2 years. And if we don't?" Kyle's expression turned serious, the same patronizing look Dad wore when explaining why I couldn't handle money. "Maya, successful people don't think about failure. That's poverty mindset. Rich people focus on opportunity." The poverty mindset comment was particularly rich coming from someone whose entire lifestyle was funded by investment returns I'd been generating through actual financial expertise. But Kyle had no idea that his sister was the anonymous trust administrator, listed on the quarterly statements he never bothered reading. My secure phone rang with a call from Dr. Elizabeth Hammond, Senior Trust Advisor and my supervisor at Vanguard. "Maya, I'm looking at the Patterson Trust file. Your brother is requesting immediate liquidation of $4.5 million for a real estate investment." "That's correct. He's here in my office now explaining the opportunity." "Have you reviewed the investment documentation?" I glanced at Kyle's crayon-level business plan. "The due diligence is minimal." "Maya, you realize this violates every fiduciary standard we maintain? Liquidating nearly 60% of trust assets for an unvetted real estate speculation would constitute gross negligence." Kyle was listening to my side of the conversation, his confidence beginning to waver as he heard terms like fiduciary standards and gross negligence. "Who are you talking to?" he asked. "Dr. Hammond, Senior Trust Advisor. She's reviewing your investment proposal." "Dr. Hammond?" Kyle's voice cracked slightly. "Maya, why are you talking to senior advisors about family business?" I put the call on speaker. "Dr. Hammond, could you explain to my brother why this investment request is problematic?" "Mr. Patterson, liquidating $4.5 million from a family trust for an unvetted real estate investment would violate our fiduciary duty to protect long-term beneficiary interests. Your sister Maya has grown this trust by 86% over 6 years through disciplined portfolio management. This proposed investment would jeopardize everything she's built." The silence in my office was deafening. Kyle's face went pale as the implications hit him. "Maya, you're not just working at this company. You're managing our trust." "I've been managing the Patterson Family Trust for 6 years," I confirmed. I structured it during my graduate program at Wharton, implemented it during my internship here, and have personally overseen its growth from $4.2 million to $7.8 million. Kyle stared at me like I'd just revealed I was secretly Batman. But you can't handle money. Dad said. Dad said a lot of things, I replied calmly. Now let's discuss what happens when beneficiaries request financially irresponsible asset distributions. The emergency family meeting took place that afternoon in the main conference room at Vanguard Fiduciary Trust, where I'd requested all beneficiaries appear for what Kyle had described to them as a routine trust review. Dad, Mom, and Kyle filed into the marble-appointed conference room expecting to meet with some anonymous financial advisor who would approve Kyle's Newark development scheme. Instead, they found me sitting at the head of the polished mahogany table in my tailored business suit, flanked by Dr. Elizabeth Hammond and two other senior partners whose combined experience managing institutional wealth exceeded 40 years. Good afternoon, I said, standing as they entered. I'm Maya Patterson, certified financial analyst and senior trust administrator. I've been managing your family's financial assets for the past 6 years. The silence was so complete I could hear the air conditioning humming. Dad found his voice first, though it came out as a croak. Maya, you're the trust administrator? I'm the M. Patterson listed on every quarterly statement you've been receiving since 2018, I confirmed. The same statements that detail how your trust has grown from $4.2 million to $7.8 million under my management. Dr. Hammond opened her leather portfolio and spread financial documents across the conference table. Mr. Patterson, your daughter has generated an average annual return of 12.3% while maintaining optimal tax efficiency and risk management. The Patterson Family Trust is consistently ranked in the top 5% of institutional family trusts we manage. Kyle stared at the performance charts like they were written in hieroglyphics. But Maya, you said you couldn't understand my cryptocurrency investments. I said they were complex, I corrected. I didn't say I couldn't understand them. I understand them perfectly, which is why I've prevented you from losing your principal on speculative investments for 6 years. Mom's voice was barely a whisper. The monthly payments, $65,000 every month. Our trust distributions I've been calculating and approving based on portfolio performance and tax optimization, I finished. The same distributions that have funded Kyle's real estate ventures, Dad's business expenses, and the luxury lifestyle you've been showcasing on social media. Dad's face went from pale to red as the magnitude of his misunderstanding hit him. You mean, this whole time you've been managing your money, Dr. Hammond interjected, while listening to you publicly question her financial competence. It's quite remarkable, actually. We've never had a trust administrator demonstrate such professionalism while being so thoroughly underestimated by the beneficiaries. I pulled out Kyle's Newark development proposal and placed it next to our trust's actual investment portfolio, blue-chip equities, municipal bonds, REITs, and international diversification that had weathered 3 market corrections without significant loss. Kyle's current proposal would liquidate $4.5 million for an investment in a Newark parking lot with a developer whose last 3 projects ended in bankruptcy and federal fraud charges, I explained. As trustee, I have a fiduciary obligation to protect your long-term financial interests. Kyle slumped in his chair, his confident real estate expertise suddenly looking like what it had always been: dangerous amateur hour. However, I continued, opening a different folder, I also have discretionary authority to terminate trust relationships when beneficiaries demonstrate persistent financial irresponsibility or show disrespect for fiduciary management. Dad leaned forward, panic finally replacing his usual dismissive arrogance. Maya, what are you saying? I'm saying the Patterson Family Trust can be dissolved immediately if you prefer to manage your own finances going forward. The daughter they dismissed as financially incompetent was holding their entire lifestyle in her professionally trained hands. 4 months later, I signed the final Patterson Family Trust dissolution papers in my new office as managing partner at Vanguard Fiduciary Trust, where my successful handling of the situation had earned recognition throughout the institutional wealth management industry. The dissolution had been swift and decisive. Within 72 hours of our conference room revelation, Kyle had attempted to override my investment decisions by threatening legal action. Dad had demanded I approve the Newark development funding immediately, claiming I was financially destroying the family out of spite. Their lawyer had explained that trust law clearly established my fiduciary authority and that their only option was voluntary dissolution if they wanted direct control over the assets. They'd chosen dissolution, convinced they could manage $7.8 million better than their inexperienced daughter. The results were predictably catastrophic. Kyle lost $2.1 million in the Newark parking lot scheme when Big Tony Marconi disappeared with the initial investment. Dad's attempt to diversify into technology stocks had cost them another $1.4 million when he bought into 3 different cryptocurrency scams Kyle had recommended. Within 3 months, their $7.8 million had shrunk to $2.7 million, while their monthly expenses remained at the $65,000 level they'd grown accustomed to during the trust years. The Porsche had been repossessed. The McMansion was in foreclosure. Kyle's real estate license had been revoked permanently after the Newark incident triggered a state investigation into his business practices. Dad was working construction again at 62, his business having collapsed when he no longer had trust distributions to cover operating expenses. Mom had taken a job at Target while trying to sell her jewelry collection to cover basic living costs. My personal investment portfolio, built from my 6-figure salary plus performance bonuses for successful trust management, had grown to $4.2 million. I'd purchased a penthouse in downtown Philadelphia and maintained investment properties in 3 states. The family group chat had gone quiet after Kyle's criminal fraud charges made local news. Uncle Robert stopped hosting holiday parties. Cousin David's wedding invitation never arrived. They'd chosen to destroy the financial foundation I'd built rather than acknowledge my expertise. The monthly payments had stopped instantly just as I'd promised. Their dismissal of my competence had ended along with them. The Patterson family's generational wealth now belonged to the only family member who'd actually understood how to build and preserve it. Professional respect had been permanently earned. Family reconciliation was permanently impossible. And I was finally free to succeed without subsidizing their willful ignorance.